Hello, and welcome to the Live Life Happy podcast and YouTube channel. I'm so excited to have a guest on the show today. And this is someone who's truly remarkable, and he is making a difference in the world of well being as well as personal growth. And so I just would love for you to join me in welcoming Mike Jensen, the incredible author of The Truth of Happiness, A Teen's Guide to the Show. Welcome, Mike. It's so nice to have you here on the show.
It's great to be here, kiddo.
So you are a life performance coach. You have so much experience, over 12 years of experience in the coaching world, as well as helping people reach their peak performance and their peak potential. And you hold so many certifications. You have energy leadership, mental toughness training, professional coaching, and even training in the science of happiness. And you are on such a mission to help people with sustainable happiness and also to fulfill their potential. I am so in love with everything that you do. Whenever we have a meeting together, I swear to God, I learn something new and I leave with a big aha. And I'm like, okay, I want more of you. So I'm so thrilled that you have taken the time to write this book, The Truth of Happiness, A Teen's Guide. And so I just want to dig right into the amazingness of this book and what inspired you to write this book.
Uh, you know, when I started life coaching, one of the things they try to teach you is, find your niche. And what I found out is energy was my niche. I love energy. I love telling people that they always have a choice, no matter how dire things can get. They always have a choice to show up with whatever energy they want, and it pretty much writes their life. So, my experience is I work with a lot of adults, C-level executives, athletes from, high school clear to professional level. But there was one thing that, really caught my eye is the next generation. What are we teaching these kids? You know, I, I know school is amazing and the load that they put on these teachers. Our kids learn how to add, subtract, multiply, divide, maybe a little government and history. But with the economic, downpour that we're all trying to just kind of mangle through, the parents are struggling, the teachers are struggling. Who is really teaching these kids how to be happy? And unfortunately, the whole happiness thing fell back into the commercialization of society, where kids now think, instant gratification is happiness. And we need to get away from it. And I'm not saying instant gratification is bad. I'm just saying what we feel is excitement. It's not happiness. And if we don't, if we don't separate the two, what it does is we actually become addicted to instant gratification, because sooner or later that newness wears off, and our energy levels start going back down, and then we're looking for our next fix. I mean, whether it's a new watch, a new car, a new spouse, a new city, a new job. We always think something else coming along is going to make us happy. And the truth is that the real sustainable happiness is within. And it's more of a giving process than a gathering process. But again, like I said, I mean, even somebody my age, I wasn't for sure what it was. I mean, it took me a long journey to finally understand all my happiness was tied up in me, not anything outside of me. And now that we've kind of got to that point, I want to make sure we're teaching it to our kids, and I'm trying to get this book out. We started with this one here where, we get it to the teenagers, because, being a teenager is probably the hardest part in your life. I mean, these kids, they have a internal struggle that goes on every day. Half of them says, I just want to belong. Just let me fit in. And then the other half's like, look at me, look at me. I want to be something. I want to be right. And they struggle so hard. And the society pressures and everything and peer pressure, it just takes them down. And if they don't have the right tools, where do they learn the coping skills? How do they ever find any type of happiness? And I've got three amazing boys. And I hate to say it, but one of these days, them boys are gonna have to make decisions for me. And when they do, I want them to be a proper part of society. I don't want them to be a burden where they're never happy and they're never fulfilled, and they just have that catabolic mindset of going, why me? You know, I want them to take on responsibility and accountability and just, really become a functioning part. So this book, it's just a beginning. I mean, it really is. I want to use this book. I want to get it into the schools. I want people to read it, and then, if it's proper for them, give it to their teenagers, give it to their young adults, give it to whoever they can to give them that opportunity to find that true sustainable happiness that's always been within them.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you talk about this idea of happiness is an inside job, so to speak. It's like we don't need to rely on anyone outside of us. And you really just answered my next question, which was why do you think that happiness is particularly challenging for today's teens? Well, you answered all those questions and then more. And not to mention, like, you're right. Like, this book isn't just for teens, even though that's where you're starting, because I know you've got a lot in the pipeline. So I'm curious, there's one chapter that I absolutely love. It's all about these habits. And so I was curious that your book is so good at simplifying the idea of happiness and you kind of break it down into actionable steps. So how did you choose the habits? Like how did you choose the habits and the concepts to focus on within your book?
Well, I mean, again, we talk about how we define anything. People define things as habits. Indeed, more terminology on habits is what is focused on when it comes to, doing something different to make yourself happy. When the reality is, you could define it as habits, you could define it as perception, you could just define it the way you think, because it's more about consistency. You know, I started this little venture where I really believe in the 51%. I mean, if you look at a 24-hour day, if you're happy 20%, you feel like you failed. You feel like you become more catabolic and that energy just draws in more energy. But if you could sit there and say, you know what, I was happy 51% of the day, that means you were more happy than you weren't. And that 51% is always something that you could work on. And how do we do it? By being consistent, by having the habits, you know, being more mindful, you know, influence on our thoughts instead of letting our thoughts just run rampant. Because, as human beings, unfortunately, we're programmed to be catabolic. We're programmed to be, pessimistic, negative, because we're all fighting to survive. But what are we surviving nowadays? It's not like a long time ago where we were being chased from cave to cave by a long-toothed tiger. Nowadays, we have, the fears that we deal with now are more mental fears like rejection and inadequacy and embarrassment. And they're not life-threatening fears, but yet we treat them as such. And that's what stops a lot of, especially the young adults. I mean, if they're fighting to be part of something, and they're so afraid of failure and embarrassment and rejection that they don't do half the stuff that they want. And when you don't do half the stuff you want in your life, it's not a very fulfilled life. So it's more about just, taking that chance. First of all, address it. It's not going to kill me. If I get embarrassed, I'll get over it. If I get rejected, I'll learn from it. I'll move on. But take the chance, make that habit where it makes you push and say, oh, you know what? I've already failed 3 times today. One more ain't going to matter, but I'm going to try something different, do something different. Because, living a long life miserable is not living at all.
Oh my gosh, so many nuggets of wisdom in here. And like, this is why you're going to want to get your hands on this book just for yourself and then give it to your kids and your teens in your life. So, yeah, you touch on so many of these habits or concepts such as empathy, gratitude, finding your passion, the role of relationships. Even you talk about fears and overcoming obstacles, acceptance and letting go. I love that you have the element of this idea of compassion. And you just spoke to that really, really nicely. And just the fact that, like, is so important. And these are all lessons that we can all learn, but also most specifically in our teens. And so you mentioned that happiness isn't a destination, but a process. I'm in love with how you describe that. And then you also talk in your book about sustainable happiness. So, what does ongoing process look like in real life?
I mean, I have a terminology. Here we are back to defining words. I have a thing called true self. And it's something that I try to tell all my clients to envision. Because if you can envision it, then you can set the goal for it. And the definition of a true self, in my opinion, obviously, is being the most grateful, compassionate, empathetic, and forgiving person you can be. Now, we all know there's no such thing as perfection. So we have to face the reality. Will I ever hit that image? Maybe not, but it gives you something to work towards. So what would your day look like? I mean, what would you look like that moment being that most grateful? Being grateful for everything in your life because everything's a gift. We're owed nothing. I mean, we're popped out, we live, and then we succumb to it. So being grateful for everything all of a sudden gives you that different perspective. Instead of always looking at the lacking, you're looking at the abundance. And unfortunately, a lot of people can't see that far. But again, like the compassion, doing things for others. The thing is, if you do something for someone else and you expect something in return, that's not compassion. That's a business transaction. So, we have to understand being compassionate, and it's not just to others, but to yourself too. I mean, we're our worst enemy sometimes. I mean, I work with a lot of catabolic people that definitely just want to beat themselves up all the time for no reason. So we have to find that compassion and then empathy. I mean, trying to see somebody else's story without putting our spin or our judgments on it. Our experiences. That old walk a mile in their shoes. Just really try to understand, because it only creates more compassion for them. And then the last one, which is tough for everybody, is forgiveness. It's not walking up to somebody and saying, "Hey, I forgive what you did to me." It's letting go of that catabolic energy you carry, that grudge, that anger, and just letting it go. I mean, you don't have to deal with them anymore, but you don't have to carry the anger no more. And again, it's just as important for yourself too. I mean, we make mistakes every day. I mean, I remember my dad. My dad was an amazing man, and we'd be working out in the garage. He would do something, and oh my goodness, he would just literally verbally abuse himself. I mean, just you. I mean, and it really hit me like he was his worst enemy. He was one of the smartest men I knew. I mean, mechanically, there was nothing he couldn't do, but he was the only thing that held himself back. And that forgiveness is saying, you know what, you're not perfect. It's okay. You're going to make mistakes. Just learn from them and move on. You don't have to hold that grudge against yourself because you screwed something up. It's okay. So, and the neat thing about, working towards your true self, envisioning that person, is that is also the key to a sustainable happiness. Because if you're being grateful for everything in your life, and them are the thoughts you're having, the perception that you're building, the habits that you're using, if you're being compassionate to others, doing good things for other people with no sense of reward, when you're trying to understand people without judging them, trying to help them along their journey, and when you're forgiving, let go of that nasty catabolic energy, how can you not be happy? I mean, you're giving all that away. You're giving gratitude, you're giving compassion, you're giving empathy, and you're giving forgiveness. So it's always been a giving process, not a gathering process where all of a sudden, boom, I mean, you've already sustained that 51% for the day, and you're just building more on it. So, I mean, that's the number one goal, is just, envision your true self, envision them four things and doing them every day, and how to be better every day at it. And you'll see that sustainable happiness just grow and grow and grow.
That has to be one of the best definitions of happiness isn't a destination, but it's a process, and all the things that we can do on a day-to-day basis, moment to moment basis, minute to minute basis, that can lead and generate feelings and emotions of happiness, and that it's that process. And then I love that you bring in this idea that we are human, that like your dad, sometimes we are going to quote fail, and then there's an opportunity to look at it. Am I going to tear myself down, or am I going to see the growth in this? And so I love your perspective on your book. And I think that that is so beautiful, that message, because a lot of us say, I'm going to be happy when I get my degree, when
Hmm.
I'm happy when everything goes my way. Well, news brief, everything isn't going to go your way. So what tools can we have to help us through that process? And of course, we're not going to be happy all the time. And that's what, the critique is this happyology, that you're happy all the time. But that's why I love your book, because you're actually offering tools when we know that we are human, that we are going to be knocked down. There are going to be challenges and struggles, but how can we navigate, and then I love that you also talk about, you share in your book this idea, and there's a whole chapter on fear, and you sometimes talk about how stress can block happiness. And so, can you speak to that? How your book can help teens overcome these challenges?
Well, again, like I said earlier, I mean, the fear, the inner conflict, the stress, the anger, all the catabolic stuff that we really deal with on a day by day basis, if we just challenged it, if we didn't try to hide from it, if we didn't try to run from it, if we just looked at it, took a step back from ourselves and looked, okay, why did I get triggered? Why am I afraid? What is there really to be a fear of? And what we call that is, there's an acronym for it called DATA. And it's more about a deadly accurate truth analysis. And if you just look at the deadly truth of it, most of the fears we incur won't hurt us. Oh, it might hurt your ego, but it won't hurt you. Being rejected, being embarrassed. I had this youngster start crying the other day because he said something he thought was inappropriate and he was embarrassed. But what he said it was a question. He asked me something. And unfortunately, because of my hearing loss, my hearing aids weren't working real well that day, and I kept saying what, and he thought I was challenging him. And I pulled him off to the side. I said, "No, don't you ever be embarrassed to ask a question. That's how you learn. If you don't ask questions, you'll stop learning." One nugget I would definitely tell everybody listening is, if you have children, and when you get to a certain age and you're having dinners every night, if you have the discipline to be able to have the opportunity to sit down with your children every night at dinner, the first question I'd ask is, where did you fail today? Let's talk about it. Because children nowadays are so afraid of failure, so afraid of embarrassment or rejection or inadequacy or non-acceptance. If you can just have them conversations more on a daily basis and get them not so much numb to it, but okay to the ideal. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to see it and learn from it. Because, there's a lot of people out there never had that opportunity. And to this day, they are still afraid of rejection, still afraid. They fear things and embarrassment and inadequacy. So they absolutely cut their life down to a mere percentage because they're so afraid to take any chances or take that step forward because of these fears that just completely immobilize them.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And it's so common. I love that, sitting down, and also it's so interesting and fascinating that you say this, because I remember I've been through a lot in my life like everybody else.
Hmm.
And I used to hide a lot from my children, just to, like, mom is strong, mom is tough, mom is strong, she
Yep.
doesn't cry. And so I realized that I was doing a disservice actually to my daughter, especially. And so now what I do is, because she's like, Mom, you're always happy. And I'm like, actually, I'm not always happy. And then so then I realized that I do have to let my daughter see my vulnerability and understand that, it's okay to cry. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay. And so to your point, exactly that is I now let her know it's like, you know what? I'm not having a good day today. And here are the feelings that I'm feeling. And, so what I'm going to do to try and turn my day around is this XYZ. And I now take it as an opportunity. It's like, I got to journal this out. I take it as opportunities to help my daughter so she can see, ways to cope, and that, what, life isn't always sunshine and butterflies. So you literally answered my next question, which is, what do you think that schools or families can do, and what role can they play in supporting teens through some of these challenges? And that you gave us such a lovely example.
Well, I mean, it's an education. Everything's an education. You got to be willing to learn. I mean, the information's out there. I mean, I didn't reinvent the wheel. I found out through my own trials and tribulations. I've got quite a past too, and I went through a lot, and it made me realize, wait a minute, a lot of the things that I believed were wrong. And until I'm able to challenge my own limiting beliefs, nothing will change. And the whole happiness thing, I mean, it's kind of like fear. We want to be fearless. We want to be happy. But the truth is, life is not that way. We're not always going to be happy. We're not. It's kind of like if I asked you, what's your favorite part of a roller coaster? I mean, what is it? Do you like the going up? Do you like coming down? What start to stop? What is it? What's your favorite part, Andrea?
You're asking the wrong person, because I do not like roller coasters. You're
So I mean,
asking the wrong person.
it really depends on the person. Some people are like,
Yeah,
when we're going up the hill, and then there's some people, when my stomach comes up through
exactly.
my throat, and then I would even ask, okay, what's the worst part? And a lot of people say, well, when it comes to a stop. I said, well, you know what? That's life. That's life. We all have our favorite parts.
Yes.
We all enjoy certain parts, and then there's other parts we don't enjoy. But it's all part of the ride, ain't it? I mean, if we don't understand that there's going to be some hard times, and we have the coping skills, and we can literally, you know, change our own emotions through, the very thoughts that we have. I mean, there's always going to be bad moments, I mean, I was talking to a very good friend of mine the other day who lost her father. She was struggling, and rightfully so. And I told her, I said, everybody has an opportunity to mourn, and nobody can tell you when you're done mourning, but you have to understand when you're mourning, you're not really living. Everything kind of comes to a pause, and when you're ready to get back living, you have to make that decision to stop mourning. And I think a lot of people get it mixed up where if I stop mourning, then I'm not honoring this person's life. Well, the
Mm.
best way you can honor a person's life in a situation like that is remember every memory you had that made you laugh, that made you smile, that made you feel like idiots, or the times that you disagreed and got over it. I mean, remembering them memories, that's how you immortalize somebody to 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 honor their life instead of being catabolic and falling into victimhood because you don't have that no more. And she's a very strong young lady, and again, like you said, she wouldn't cry around her children. And I asked her why. She goes, because I'm supposed to be the strong one. I said, maybe crying is strength. Maybe, teaching your children how to show emotions is a strength. We try to think vulnerability is a bad thing, and it's not. It's an amazing thing, especially in relationships. So sometimes we have to take that step back and look at our own limiting beliefs. I mean, my parents were amazing parents. Did they make mistakes? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I had to either say, okay, is that going to work in my life or not? Is it a limiting belief? Does it work for me? If it doesn't, I need to replace it. If it does, fine, I'll keep it. But every day we have to look at, okay, what's really holding me back? Because the truth is in life, it's just us. We hold ourselves back. We can play the victim and blame everybody else out there, but the truth is, I have worked with too many people from too many walks of life to be able to ever jump on that bandwagon and say, oh, yeah, it's their fault or somebody else. No. These people pulled their bootstraps up in some of the worst, imaginable environments and become successful, productive parts of society. There's no excuses except the excuses we use. So
Mm.
sooner or later we have to stop. We have to challenge ourselves and say, "Hey, I can do better. I will be better," and that's envisioning that true self and working towards it, setting that goal.
Okay, I am so excited for people to I already know how great you are, but I'm so excited for people to have a little taste of you because that is exactly what's in your book. And you wrote this book from your heart and you just it gave us such a great metaphor with the roller coaster and that happiness means different things to different people and that it really is about finding your own version of that and what makes you happy, how to cultivate it, but you also draw on the science of generally what helps people to have well-being. And
Mhm.
so I love that your book is all encompassing, but you also have review questions and areas for notes for personal exploration for these teens to really delve into their own, like, what are my strengths, what are my goals, and I love that you tap into that personable sort of aspect of it. So this your book is going to be received so well. It's available now everywhere they sell books. So I'm curious, Mike, what is one key takeaway that you hope every reader is going to walk away after reading The Truth of Happiness?
That they are always more powerful than they ever expect. That's the problem with most people is we talk ourselves into things. Oh, I don't have the energy, or I'm not powerful enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough. We are always 10 times stronger than we ever know. Ever know. I've seen strength in people that, should have never have gotten anywhere, should have never have lived. They were struggling with, whatever it may be, relationships, careers, alcohol, drugs. But they were stronger than what they believed. And when they started buying into that, all of a sudden they found that strength. And that strength just absolutely catapulted them to the next level of becoming who they want to become. That's the reality of it is we become who we want to become. The question is, do we ask ourselves, who is that person? Do we really, or are we just going through the motions in life? I see so many people just, every day, just the same old thing, but yet they're so unhappy and so unfulfilled because they're not defining themselves. They're just letting the environment influence them. And the reality in life is we should influence our environment. We shouldn't let the environment influence us.
I love that. I love that feeling of agency, like we're the agents of our own life, that you really do, you bring that message, and that is the common thread through your entire book. Thank you so much, Mike Jensen, everybody, for joining us today. Your insights are so inspiring. It's clear that this book, The Truth of Happiness, A Teen's Guide, is going to make a huge impact. It's going to help so many young people. And I'm just so excited for you and the launch of this book into the world. And I know that you're going to be spreading more love, more joy, more happiness, more meaning and everything in the lives of the readers. So I just want to celebrate you. So don't wait, everybody. Your book, grab your book now. It's available everywhere they sell books. The Truth of Happiness, A Teen's Guide today. And this is wonderful. A Journey to Sustainable Happiness. Yay, Mike Jensen.
Thanks, kiddo.